What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Between the Lines Sports Podcast. We are your host. I'm Blair. This is Patrick. This is our full podcast for the week. We will be recapping college football weeks 9 and 10, and then previewing week 11. And then we will dive into the NFL and recap weeks 8 and 9 and preview week 10. We got a little behind as we weren't able to do one last week, so we are recapping 2 weeks instead of one. All right, started off week 9 of college football. Just kind of going over some things that happened, not really getting too in depth to any of the games, but I think the biggest thing from that week was Kansas upsetting Oklahoma. Not a lot of people saw that coming, even though Kansas is a good football team. I think they're actually ranked now. They've had some good wins this year, but it was a big loss for Oklahoma. They were 6th in the country when it happened. And then they ended up dropping one after that to Oklahoma State after already losing to Kansas the week before. So, they've got 2 losses now, so that's big for them. But it was a big win for Kansas, obviously, and not too much other than that. You got anything on that one?
Yeah, I mean, Kansas has come a long way under Leipold, so not really shocked that they won. Both teams blew a lot of chances in that game. I know it was a couple weeks ago, but I watched a good bit of that one. A great game. They had a crazy, stupid lightning delay at the end of October, so I don't understand how that happens in Kansas. It was like 50 degrees, but it was a great game, and I just really impressed with Kansas, especially with Jalen Daniels being hurt. Their backup Jason Bean's really improved the last couple of years, and just were able to get it done. I think the biggest thing for me about Oklahoma in general is just, especially with them moving to the SEC, I think life's going to be hard for them the first couple of years because they really struggle to stop the run, and everybody in the SEC can run. So that's one thing I noticed. I mean, they're talented, they're good. Gabriel's going to be gone next year, and they have a tough time stopping the run. So I don't know. I think they're going to have a tough adjustment. That's the biggest thing I see from watching them, just because they get gashed on the ground, and every team in the SEC, for the most part, can run. So I think they're going to have a tough adjustment. But that was a great game, and I was really happy Kansas could win. I mean, I'm all for chaos, especially when Tennessee isn't up at the top. So that was a great game.
All right, next one was Oregon versus Utah. Oregon just kind of blew them out of the water. It was a really impressive win for them, and almost a demoralizing loss for Utah. We talked about it. I remember us talking about, even without Cam Rising, they've found a way to put up some wins this year and, kind of handle business the way they should with the roster that they have. But I did think Oregon was going to win, but I didn't think it was going to be by 4 touchdowns. So, credit to Oregon. They're playing really good right now. They've got only the 1 loss to Washington, who's undefeated. So, in these last few weeks of college football, you never know what could happen. It might be 2 teams from their conference in the playoffs if some craziness happens.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on it. I wasn't with you on thinking Oregon was going to win. I thought Utah would squeak one out, but obviously I was kind of maybe overvaluing or Utah's defense, how strong they were. It's just Oregon's definitely on another level this year. Their offense is really clicking, and their defense is strong too. So a lot of those Pac-12 teams, typically you see a strong offense and their defense doesn't really hold up. Not the case with Oregon. And maybe that Washington loss, which was a nip and tuck game, really woke them up, and now they know they can't drop another one or they got no shot. So yeah, that game Oregon really took care of business and just blew Utah out in their own stadium. So that was impressive.
All right, next one from week 9 was Georgia Tech upsetting North Carolina. Georgia Tech's not a real great team this year. They're kind of middle of the pack in the ACC conference, and just kind of a surprising loss for North Carolina. It was a high-scoring game, but typically, with Drake May, their quarterback and stuff, I figured they would have found a way to pull it out. But credit to Georgia Tech. I think they had a big fourth quarter. I think they scored like 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter to come out on top. But tough loss for North Carolina, but very valuable win for Georgia Tech, who's kind of having an average season.
Yeah, not only did Georgia Tech score like 22 points in the fourth quarter, they ran for like over 250 yards in the fourth quarter alone. So just the biggest thing is North Carolina this year starting 6-0 really thought they'd maybe be able to put it together because they've done that a couple years in a row now and kind of fallen apart down the stretch. Defense just isn't holding up for them. Obviously, they've got one of the guys who's going to go in the first round this year with Drake May, but I mean, you got to stop somebody at some point. So Georgia Tech, I mean, they're up and coming. Brent Key obviously took over last year, and they won a couple games they shouldn't have at the end, including upsetting North Carolina last year, and now he's gotten them to 5-4 this year. So I think that was a good hire for them, going with somebody in house as opposed to doing a national search, and just ultimately landing on him, and he's got them headed in the right direction. But yeah, I was surprised that North Carolina, just with such a special offense, is not able to close out these games. But their defense has been letting them down.
Yeah. All right, last one from week 9 was Arizona stunning Oregon State. I think I've heard you talk about it a few times over the course of this season about Arizona being a better team than a lot of people expect. I'm looking at their schedule right now. They lost in overtime to Mississippi State, which would have been a good win. They lost to Washington, who's undefeated right now and a top 5 team, by a touchdown. They lost to USC in triple overtime, and then they beat Washington State and Oregon State, who were both ranked in the top 20. And then they beat UCLA this past week, who was a top 20 team. So they're now ranked in the top 25, and with good reason too. They've got 3 losses, and they're pretty tough teams if you look at it from a schedule and strength of schedule standpoint. So kind of surprising still. I think Oregon State is a good team. So yeah, definitely surprised they did lose, but I think they're a better team than a lot of people give them credit for.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was in that USC game, they started the freshman quarterback. I think Jaden DeLara maybe was hurt, or maybe they just decided to go with the freshman quarterback. I'm not going to pretend to try to pronounce his name. But he really, I mean, that USC game, they should have won that game, and then they lost in that crazy new overtime 2-point shootout rule. And then, like you said, they absolutely dismantled Washington State on the road, I think. And then they beat Oregon State in this game you're talking about there. Obviously, the controversial call where Oregon State tried to score on a fake field goal before the half from like 30 yards out instead of taking the points and ended up losing by 3. But like you said, Arizona, they've just been coming along. Every game they've lost has been very competitive, and they're just solid. I mean, obviously, Jed Fish getting hired from the Patriots staff to be the coach in college, first-time head coach, was definitely criticized, but they've played the long game, and it certainly worked out because, I mean, they're a real tough team that nobody wants to play down the stretch. So Arizona is improving, and it just shows that it stinks that the Pac-12 is finally getting good as a conference when it dismantles. So tough to see, but it's fun to see this last year of these matchups.
Yeah, for sure. All right, moving on to week 10. First one up, kind of doing the same thing, just kind of reviewing some games, not really getting too in depth with them, but a top 25 matchup, Texas and Kansas State. This was at Texas. Texas is a really proven team this year. They've got a good quality win against Alabama. And their loss, who'd they lose to this year? I know they only have one loss.
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma, that's right. So, a decent loss for what it is. But, they had to win this one in overtime. So, big win for them. Not really too much to say other than that.
Yeah, I mean, Kansas State's a solid team. It's a good win for them. I think right now they're just kind of trying to weather the storm without Quinn Ewers. They've been playing the freshman, or one of the freshmen back up. Maybe he's a freshman, maybe not. That Malik Murphy guy kind of started the game strong and then turned it over a couple of times there in the second half and let Kansas State back in it and went to overtime. And Texas was able to hold on. Like you said, Kansas State decided instead of trying to kick the field goal, they were going to try and win it from the 4-yard line on 4th down and just weren't able to get it off. But Kansas State's a quality team. Texas keeps finding a way to win. I think if they're able to get Ewers back, I really like their chances to win the Big 12 now, especially with Oklahoma probably not going to make the championship game. I think Texas is the best team, but again, a lot of games still to play. But like you said, they just kind of survive in advance. That's the name of the game now with the playoff.
Mm-hmm. All right, next one. This was a really good game to watch. It was Ole Miss at A&M. Just kind of back and forth. Ole Miss was ahead at halftime, and then A&M clawed back in it, and then came down to the wire, and A&M had a chance to tie it to kind of hopefully force overtime. They missed the field goal, so Ole Miss was able to hang on, and keep their streak going and kind of live with that one loss and have a big matchup this week with Georgia to hopefully strengthen their chances of getting in the playoffs and getting to Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, everybody wants to poke fun at A&M, but I mean, they're a pretty solid team. I mean, they got blown out at Miami for sure, but I mean, they've lost at home to Bama by 6, they lost to Tennessee on the road by 7, and they lost to Ole Miss by 3 at the end on a missed field goal that you figured that kicker could make. So, I don't know. I think
Mm-hmm.
much better team than a lot of people think, but obviously they've lost a lot of close games. But Ole Miss, the offense is electric. I mean, they got Trey Harris, this transfer receiver that's a stud. He made like an Odell catch this weekend. Jackson Dart's obviously playing well. They can run the ball. Their defense is nothing to write home about, but I mean, I guess it's good enough to get the job done. I mean, that's what's going to give me pause. I'm thinking they can play with Georgia this weekend. They can't stop anybody really when it matters, in my opinion. Maybe they'll prove me wrong, but obviously this was a big win to get Ole Miss to 8-1. 2 of the last 3 seasons is no small feat, and Kiffin continues to prove that. I mean, he can find a way to get it done, especially on the offensive side. So great football game, and Ole Miss was just able to make one more play to win at the end.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Next one, Clemson upsetting Notre Dame. Notre Dame had the loss to Ohio State and to Louisville, who are both top 25 teams. So, Clemson's definitely had a down year, and probably their worst year in the past 10 years or so. So I didn't expect it for sure. I think the line was a lot closer than what it probably should have been, but they came out on top, so credit to them. But a tough loss for Notre Dame, and kind of a team this at the beginning of the year looked like they might be a playoff team. Now they're just kind of trickling down and spiraling. So hopefully they can bounce back. But good win for Clemson.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't predicted it for sure. I wouldn't have predicted Clemson to win, but just after the week that Clemson endured with the 4-4 start and the Tyler from Spartanburg on Dabo's call-in show is just kind of all the fuel to the fire and the motivation they needed, and a huge non-conference opponent coming in, Notre Dame, big game. They probably had it circled on the schedule, especially after that loss up there last year. And just Sam Hartman did not play well. He threw an interception that was kind of just like, man, this guy's a fifth-year senior that's been a stud, and he makes a play like that. So everything just kind of fell into Clemson's lap. They played great. I think they might have even benefited from Shipley having the concussion against North Carolina State, because it allowed the backup Phil Maffa to play, and I think that he's a little bit more dynamic of a player. Even though Shipley's good, I just think Maffa is much tougher to tackle and a lot quicker and more explosive, and he had well over 100 yards, maybe even got to 200 yards in that game. So impressed with the way Clemson played. I'm no fan of Dabo. Anybody that knows me knows that, but I don't think they're dead yet. I think the guy can definitely coach, and like you said, I mean, I think going into this year they had won 10 games, 12 straight years, so wouldn't be writing his obituary yet. I think that Clemson can still have some success. Just one of those years where everything's gone against them. I mean, they're a few turnovers away from being like 8-1. So bounce back performance by Clemson, played well and did what they needed to do to win that game at home. It was a big win for their program.
All right, next one was Georgia and Missouri. We've talked about it before. I think Kirby Smart is one of the best coaches as far as making adjustments at halftime in the country. They've had several games since he's been there where it's been close at halftime, and they've made the adjustments for the second half and pulled away and won the game, whether it was close or by a lot. Either way, I just think they play really good in the second half every week. And that was kind of the story this one. This one was tied 10-10 at halftime. Third quarter, Missouri comes out, kicks a field goal to go up 3, and then Georgia scored a touchdown and didn't really look back. Then it got a little close in the fourth quarter, 21-24. Then Missouri got the ball back to kind of take the lead, but made a mistake, turned the ball over, and then Georgia got 2 more field goals to stretch it out to 30-21. But it was a tough game, close game for the most part. But Georgia just kind of having that winning DNA was kind of the difference, and they didn't crack under pressure, and I think Missouri did at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, same thing was with Dabo. Anybody that knows me knows that my disdain for Georgia, but I mean, I do respect them. I do respect how good they are, and I'm kind of a guy that I don't know. If I hear a quote that I like or something that is I think's motivating, I have a book and I write it down in it. I've got like pages full. and stuff. So Kirby's just one of those guys. He can motivate. It's ridiculous. Like even me, somebody a third party that isn't a fan, like he says stuff, and you can just be like, I understand why these guys play for him, and I understand why he's successful because of the stuff he says and the way he can motivate. I mean, there really aren't many people like him, honestly, given those speeches and how impassioned he is, and you can see why they're good. But this game specifically, I was shocked with how well Missouri played with them. I mean, not that I don't think Missouri's good. I figured Georgia had all the motivation of being number 2 in the first college football playoff and like a huge matchup and all this kind of stuff. And none of that seemed to really matter as far as the gameplay on Saturday. I mean, Georgia was kind of in control in the second half. I mean, didn't feel like they were going to lose, but man, Missouri was making it a lot tighter than you thought it would. So was impressed by Missouri more so than Georgia. I figured Georgia would find a way to win and take care of business. I think the same theme is running true. Georgia's a really good team. They're just not as good as they've been the last 2 years. And they could still win the national championship, and that still be true. Just because those two teams the last 2 years have just been ridiculous, especially on defense. So I think my biggest takeaway is I was more impressed with how well Missouri played them, even though Georgia obviously won the game and it really wasn't in question late in the second half. I was more impressed with what Missouri was able to do, successfully moving the ball and just kind of handling the moment. So, I mean, talking about the Tennessee-Missouri game this weekend, that's kind of something you could look at. I mean, they didn't fold in the moment. So that was what I was most impressed by, the way Missouri played.
All right, next one. Kind of talked about it a little bit already, but the Oklahoma State beating Oklahoma. Oklahoma already coming off a tough loss to Kansas, and then Oklahoma State came in. They went to Oklahoma State, but Oklahoma State ended up winning that one, a rivalry game. It was a close one, 24-27. But again, Oklahoma's kind of not really beat themselves, but they've got 2 losses now, so it's gonna be tough to get in that Big 12 championship, especially with Texas only having the 1 loss and have a few more games to play. But playoff picture is definitely looking a lot slimmer for them than it did a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, the last bedlam for the foreseeable future, we know they're both, well, specifically Oklahoma State isn't happy about Oklahoma leaving them behind, and obviously just a lot of hatred there to begin with. So it was definitely a classic if it's the last one we see for a while. But like you said, just impressive Oklahoma State. I mean, they went from in week 3 they lost at home to South Alabama to now they're 7-2 and arguably the hottest team in the Big 12, especially with Ewers out for Texas still. So they're playing really good football. Just a nip and tuck back and forth game. Oklahoma had a number of chances to either take the lead or tie the game and just weren't able to get it quite close enough to kick that game time field goal or move the ball into position to kind of make one more play. So just a classic rivalry game, kind of one of those late November games in early November, and Oklahoma State just able to pull it out. And like you said, now kind of the driver's seat for the Big 12 championship game is Oklahoma State and Texas. If they can both take care of business, and that would be a great game. So we'll see how it plays out. Obviously, a few weeks left, but those two teams are playing really well right now.
All right, next one was Washington at USC. This one kind of went how I expected it to. I think a lot of people expected 2 high-powered offenses, high-scoring game, 52-42. If you've watched either of them play this year, I think it's pretty easy to say that Washington's the better team. And, they came out on top that day. And USC finally, they lost and have 3 losses now in the year. So they're pretty much out of the playoff pictures. But this was a good win for Washington as far as making their case for the playoffs if it comes down to it. But I don't know. It's kind of an up in the air question with Caleb Williams and what he's going to do with his future now, being that they have 3 losses and playoffs are kind of very slim at this point. As far as the NFL draft goes, if he's going to, go to the NFL, if he's going to stop playing the season early so he doesn't get hurt, or if he's going to come back next year. I think all of them are really an option. I think if he does go to the NFL, he'll be the number 1 pick. But I'm not really sure what to take from it as far as that goes. But again, just another good win for Washington as far as improving their resume.
Well, first on Caleb Williams, if he sits out the rest of the year, it kind of tells me what I need to know. And second off, I think he's Kyler Murray 2.0. I mean, I don't see him being that successful. He's not the tallest guy. Unless you're like a rare case like Lamar Jackson, being somebody who thinks they're going to run first or scramble around and do all that stuff. Just is not very successful in the NFL, as you know, you being more avid about the NFL than me. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't use the first round draft or the first overall pick on him, but I'm not a GM, obviously. But like you said, I mean, Washington's offense, high powered, ridiculous, very difficult to stop when they're clicking. We know USC's defense has had their struggles this year, and then they let their defensive coordinator go Monday morning. So, not really shocked with the offensive output. Like you said, like over 1,200 yards of offense, almost 1,200 yards of offense in this game. Both teams went north of 500, and just a typical Pac-12 after dark shootout. It just wasn't quite after dark. So, a great
Yeah.
game. I'd be interested to see what would happen with Washington if they play Oregon again, which we might get to see just because, I mean, it's hard to trust that Washington defense against a team that can go against them because I don't think Washington's going to score every time they touch the ball if they play Oregon again. So we'll see. That would be a fun matchup to see again, but obviously a number of games to get to before that would happen. But impressed with Washington, impressed with Penix. He's obviously a great player, and DeBoer has had a great run in his first 3 years at Washington. So impressive, and we'll see if Washington can finish it out and finish the season undefeated.
Yeah. Another thing on Caleb Williams, I think he's kind of hurt. I don't know if he's hurt his draft stock, but if I'm a GM, why would I want to draft a player who's pretty much almost not directly said, but said, if I don't have a stake in this team, if he wants to be a partial owner of the team he plays for, that he's not going to suit up. He hasn't directly said that, but let alone just saying outright, like, whoever drafts me, I want a stake and ownership in the team. I think that's just so bizarre. I mean, Rodgers, there was word that Rodgers did that when he tried to go to the Jets, and that was part of his free agency pitch to other teams and stuff. But I mean, none of them even went for it. So if you're not going to let a guy who's proven a Hall of Famer in partial ownership of that team, why would you let a guy who's never taken an NFL snap? So that's neither here nor there. I just thought I'd throw that out there. I just thought it was real bizarre of him as far as his future goes, and I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a great player. There's no doubt about that, but I just don't know how his game translates to the NFL. And I mean, 4 or 5 years ago, Kyler Murray's playing for Lincoln Riley in the same system at Oklahoma, and he's had his struggles and injuries and things like that in the NFL. And now you got pretty much a tiny bit taller, but pretty much the same prototype as Kyler Murray. And I don't know. We'll see. I'm not a big believer in his translation in the NFL right now.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, last one for Week 10. Bama's second half kind of pushed them past LSU. Again, I think Bama's another team that is really good at making those adjustments at halftime and winning that second half and winning a lot of games that way. LSU made some pushes to try to keep it close, but Alabama beat them pretty good. It was 42-28. I really didn't see that going that way. I thought it would be a really close game, kind of one possession game, like a lot of these matchups are between them. But Milroe probably had one of his better games on the year. I think he ended up rushing almost for 200 yards, if not 200. 155 with 4 touchdowns, which is, I mean, that's Lamar Jackson type numbers when he was at Louisville. So, good win for Bama. It keeps them in the one loss column, but definitely thought I'd see a little more fight from LSU.
Yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is that LSU has a national championship offense and not even a Tennessee high school state championship defense. I mean, Alabama could have won that game without ever throwing the ball. Milroe, I mean, obviously, very dynamic runner, has a burst, especially when he gets in that open field, and they were definitely exploiting that the other night. I mean, I think McClellan ended up having a pretty decent game too, maybe 50 or 60 yards, something like that. Not 100% sure on the stats, but Alabama pretty much when they wanted to run the ball could. Obviously Milroe, like he has a few times, has missed some throws, but there in the second half, like you said, Alabama just kind of took over. I mean, a nip and tuck back and forth game. I mean, Daniels has made some great plays. Obviously LSU's receivers with Neighbors and Thomas, I mean, those guys are really special players. LSU just can't match up on the defensive side, though. I mean, that's kind of the same thing with Missouri. I think Missouri had well over 500 yards against them and 40 points, and just Ole Miss 55 points and like 700 yards of offense. I mean, LSU's defense it's not going to allow them to be a championship level team this year. So Really impressive what they've been able to do, considering that 6-3 was still some pretty solid wins. But every game against quality competition has been a shootout. And if the offense can't score every time they touch the ball, they've kind of gotten blown off the field or at least surrendered the lead that they had. So kind of went how I figured. I figured Alabama would win by a couple scores. Just it took it longer to get there than I thought it would. So, and now it looks like Alabama, barring some miraculous upset, is going to meet whoever wins the East in Atlanta.
Yep, for sure. All right, Week 11 preview. First one up is Penn State and Michigan. This will be at Penn State. Michigan is a 4.5-point favorite. I've kind of been conflicted on what I think about this game. I've watched Penn State the last few weeks. I haven't been too impressed with them, but by the same token, kind of the same story with Michigan. I mean, they haven't really beat anybody that's worth writing home about or anything, and they've had a couple halves where they've not really played real well, where it's close to halftime and they find a way to handle their business in the second half. But I really see it going one of two ways. The environment at Penn State and them being hyped for the game and trying to beat them. I think if they jump on them early and get a good lead, I think they can win the game. But if they're not able to do that, I see Michigan winning by at least a touchdown. Just haven't been too impressed with what I've seen from Penn State lately, but they're capable of being a good team this year, and they're capable of beating a team like this, just like they were capable of beating Ohio State. They just, Allard played probably his worst game I've ever seen him play against Ohio State, and Ohio State's quarterback didn't play good either, but they made more plays and were able to get the W. But we'll see how it goes. But like I said, if Penn State doesn't jump on them early, I don't see them winning it.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on some of the stuff. Michigan hasn't played a team that could play with them the entire season. I mean, their non-conference schedule was a joke. Their Big Ten schedule so far has been, I mean, the patsies of the league. So this is their first big test. I mean, what I want to happen, I hope Penn State wins. I just kind of want that controversy, and I'm tired of Michigan. We know they've got this controversy swirling about the Connor Stallions, the video surveillance, the stealing of signs, and to me, it just seems like when there's so much negative stuff going around with a team like that, there's so much distraction, so much outside noise. I mean, at what point does that affect the team? I mean, maybe they rally, maybe they come even closer as a team and are able to finish down the stretch here, but I don't see it going that way. I think that, especially like you said, if Penn State can maybe start hot early, punch them in the mouth, get on top, I mean, I feel like they have a really solid chance to win. And I'm going to take Penn State to win this game. I just think that with all that stuff going on, Penn State to stay relevant this year needs this game. Like if they lose this game, they can still go 10-2, but they'll have lost to Ohio State and Michigan. So I think this is a big game. I think either way it's close. I think that Penn State's defense, the number one rush defense in the country, only giving up 60 yards a game, and Michigan ran for over 400 on them last year. So I think it's kind of like a revenge or kind of a pride game too here. So I just think this is going to be a great game, and I think at home Penn State's just going to find a way to knock off Michigan. I don't know. I've felt that. I feel like Michigan will still beat Ohio State because it's at home, and I just don't trust Ohio State's offense in a few weeks. But I just think for some reason I've been feeling that Penn State's going to win this game. I don't know why. I just think they will.
Yeah, I mean, I hope you're right, and like I said, I hope there's controversy. I hope they beat Michigan, and then Michigan goes and beats Ohio State. And several years ago, Penn State got kind of screwed out of the playoffs because they had that late loss in the season, whereas Ohio State had theirs kind of early. Even though they beat Ohio State head to head, they both had the one loss, and they didn't get in, and Ohio State did. But I think that was the year that Ohio State actually won national championship, beating kind of upsetting Bama in the playoffs. But yeah, I hope you're right. My dad will actually be at this game. He went up there this weekend to go to that game and go to the Steelers game as one of the few weekends that they both play at home. So, he'll be real excited if they can find a way to win, and hopefully the Steelers can handle business on Sunday too. But yeah, the more chaos, the better for playoffs. All right, next one, Alabama at Kentucky. Alabama's favored by 10.5. I feel like that's pretty close to what I think on how it's going to go. I think it'll definitely be two scores, double digits, 10 to that 14-point range. That's how I think it should go, but I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of open it up on them and win big. But I just don't see any way Kentucky winning this game. Alabama's kind of looked really good the past few weeks and have some solid wins under their belts. I think they're trying to get back where they want to be in Atlanta, and I don't think Kentucky will be in their way and stopping them.
Let me tell you, I just got a funny feeling about this game.
I
I
hope
don't know
you're right.
why. I just got a funny feeling. Bama coming off this huge game against LSU. The West is pretty much wrapped up if they win one of their next two. They're good, they're real good, but they're just not as dynamic as they have been. Their defense isn't quite as good as it usually is. They're still a solid team, but Kentucky is much better than we give them credit for. They're solid. This win right here, if they beat Alabama, I mean, they already love Stoops. They'd build a statue of the guy if he won this game. I mean,
Yeah.
this I just got a funny feeling. Not that they're going to win, but I think that this is a game where Kentucky can be right there, maybe even have the lead in the second half. And Bama's going to win the game, but I just got a feeling this is going to be just wacky. Bama never plays up there. One of the most recent times they did, but I think was my dad was telling me last week was '97, and Kentucky beat them up there. So they've only played there like 3 times since then. I think it's kind of a just I don't know a funny feeling. Maybe I'm wrong. Bama might win 56-3, but I just feel like I don't know. It's just something just quirky about this
Big
game.
way to
Noon
get you.
game. Yeah, noon game. I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's going to be wacky. I think Bama's going to win, but I think it's going to be worth watching.
I hope you're right. I would be ecstatic if that happens. That's crazy. That game and the Penn State game are both noon games.
Yeah, I mean, last week, if you looked at the schedule last week, I mean, you had Arkansas, Florida at noon. That game was freaking crazy. You had Texas, Kansas State at noon. You had that Ohio State Rutgers game at noon where it looked like Rutgers for about 2.5 quarters of that game was going to win. You had that Jacksonville State, South Carolina game where Jacksonville State had the ball down there inside the 10 and threw a pick six trying to take the lead. I mean, the noon slate, especially in November, with the way that the sun is already over the stadiums and there's shadows and the time change and everything's affecting everything. I'm telling you, something about those noon early games on Saturdays just gives me friggin' nostalgic and just chills and stuff. It's just crazy. I just love the way that those stadiums look and stuff. So the noon window is the window because then once that gets passed, that hourglass for the day is just ticking. So
Yeah.
those noon games are good. So I just for something tells me I think Penn State's going to win. I think Kentucky's going to push Alabama. I just feel like it's revving us up for next year having those 12 teams in the playoff where like pretty much at this time of year anybody in the top 25 has got a chance to get in. So
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to that, and this could be a precursor to just showing how chaotic it could be.
Yeah. I'm with you. All right, next one is Utah at Washington. Washington is a 9.5-point favorite. This is kind of a pride game for Utah. They just got their butts whooped by Oregon, so they can either roll over and let Washington kind of do the same thing, which they're capable of, or they can put up a good fight and possibly win the game. I do think Washington's going to win. If you look at the numbers of it, 9.5 is kind of an eyeball raiser or eyebrow raiser, whatever it is. You would think it would be more, especially after how this last week went, and it's at Washington too. So I don't know. This one could be a little dicey, but I do think Washington will find a way to win. I don't know how I feel about that spread number.
Yeah, I mean, like we talked about rising out. Utah just isn't the same team without him. Their defense is solid, but how many times can they stop Washington on the road? We know
Right.
Washington's defense is good, so I expect Utah to have some success. I don't think this will be anything like that Utah Oregon game. I think Utah score some points, probably stay in the game into the second half, but just Washington at home with what's all on the line. I expect Penix to continue to play well. It's kind of another with the spread you're talking about, kind of another maybe relaxed game. That USC was a huge game on the road. We knew USC's defense wasn't very good, but was Washington going to be able to get the job done? So maybe this is another relaxed scenario where Washington maybe comes out slow, a little groggy. Utah hangs with them for a long time because Utah is a good team. They're not as dynamic without rising. So like you said, I expect Washington to win. I don't know if they'll cover, but I just think at home they're going to find a way to get it done.
All right, next one is Ole Miss at Georgia. Georgia is favored by 10.5. I first looked at this one. I kind of thought Georgia would kill them. I thought they'd win by at least 2 touchdowns. But I don't know. The past day and a half, really, I've kind of been trending the other way. For some reason, I've got a weird feeling that Ole Miss is going to upset them in Athens. Uh, Now, how likely is that? Not real likely, but I don't know. Something's telling me that Kiffin's going to have something up his sleeve, and they're going to find a way. But obviously, I'll probably be wrong, and I won't be surprised. But I've just got a weird feeling about it.
No, I understand. I mean, if all of our weird feelings come true, it's going to be quite the day. But I don't trust Ole Miss's defense. I just don't. I think their offense. See, this is the thing with Ole Miss is kind of like every time they played at Bama or they've played Bama with Kiffin, like they're in the game, but they start so slow that they're kind of just like climbing uphill. So like
Yeah,
they can't get down 14-0 against Georgia in these big games like they do, and then get into the game. Like you get down 14-0 in this game, you're not gonna be able to stop them enough times to get yourself back in it. Just in my opinion, I think for Ole Miss to win, they're gonna have to start hot. They're gonna have to maybe get up a couple scores and make
yeah,
Georgia tight. Because I think at the end of the day, if Georgia is stubborn and tries to, I don't know, bleed the clock and run the ball and shorten the game like they do sometimes in those big games, I just don't have faith in Ole Miss. I would love for it to happen. I would love for Tennessee to win at 3:30 and Ole Miss to win at 7, and then the next week be a large week, to put it lightly. But I don't have faith in Ole Miss. I think that they'll score some. I think it could be very similar to the Missouri game. I don't see a way that Ole Miss actually ends up winning the game. So I hope you're right, and I hope that's what happens. I don't believe in their defense, and I just think that Georgia they've been there too many times. They know how to handle these big games, and they'll find a way to win. I could see it being close. Like I said, similar to last week. Just no faith that Ole Miss can actually get the job done. So hopefully Lane will prove me wrong.
yeah. All right, next one is USC at Oregon. Oregon's favored by 15. I do think Oregon will win the game, but I don't know. Just as good as the offense is for USC, I think they'll keep it within that 15. I don't know if it'll be like a 3-point game or anything necessarily, but they'll keep it within 2 touchdowns. I mean, unless Caleb Williams and that team is just kind of giving up, um, I see them, keeping it competitive at least. I don't know if Oregon will blow them out by any means.
Yeah, I mean 15 is a tricky number. I think Oregon wins the game regardless. Like they're just playing way too well. Like we talked about, we know they don't have a mulligan anymore. They got to finish strong, and just Bo
Yeah.
Nix is really clicking. That defense is strong. We know Lanning is just he's gonna keep the foot on the throat no matter what. So, like you said, we don't know is USC gonna keep playing or are they gonna throw in the towel because they know they can't really. I mean, they're obviously going to make a bowl game and that kind of stuff, but what's out there for them championship wise, not much. So, um, I mean, technically, I guess if they beat Oregon, they got a pretty strong shot, but because then there would be like 2 lost teams. So there is motivation. It's just, can they get it done? And I don't think they can. I like Oregon.
All right, last one we have is Florida at LSU. LSU's coming off a tough loss to Alabama. Kind of a not necessarily a nail in the coffin, but they're 6-3. It's going to be super ridiculously hard to get into the playoffs at this point. I mean, there would have to be some crazy chaos. Um, but then
Yeah, we got a
Florida,
better chance to make the playoff than them.
yeah, 100%. But yeah, and then Florida just I don't know, a team that can show up one week and then not show up the other. So depends what Florida team shows up this week. LSU is favored by 13.5. It's at LSU night game, so I do see LSU winning, but hopefully Florida makes it a little bit competitive. I don't know. I really don't know how the outcome is going to go. I just do think that LSU is going to win. I don't know what the score will be like though.
Well, if Jaden Daniels plays, LSU would cover. Obviously, we don't know if he's going to play right now. It doesn't seem like he will. So if Nussmeier's playing, I don't know. I still think LSU's going to win. LSU at night. And what Florida's trying to do is they're trying to still make me right. Because if you remember, like 2 months ago, I was like, Florida making a bowl. And they were 4 and
Yeah,
2. And I said they weren't going to win again after the Vandy game. and then South Carolina decided to vomit all over themselves and blow that game. So Florida got to 5-2, and they're still not going to make a bowl because they ain't beating LSU, they ain't beating Missouri, and they're not beating Florida State. So hopefully I'm right. I mean, we know I can't stand Florida, but looked like maybe they had turned a corner, but then we found out that South Carolina was just pretty terrible. So hopefully
Yeah.
LSU can come through. Like I said, I think if Daniels plays, there's not really a question. I think that Florida will have some success moving the ball because, like we talked about, LSU's defense is not good. But if Daniels is playing, it's kind of going to have to be Florida's going to have to score every time they touch it because LSU is going to score pretty often. So, um, that being said, even if Daniels isn't playing, they've got so many playmakers and can run the ball well too. So I just like LSU to win at home at night. It's tough to beat them there.
Yeah, I mean that night atmosphere there is wild, so I think that'll be a big factor for them in winning this game, whether Daniels plays or not, like you said. All right, moving into NFL, be a recap of weeks 8 and 9. Nothing too extensive or anything, just a couple games, couple notes. First up, week 8, Jaguars find a way to beat the Steelers. This was a close game. I don't think either team really played necessarily well besides Travis Etienne. He had a good game. Was kind of the difference maker in that big touchdown he had. But Steelers just didn't look good on either side of the ball. Couldn't really get going on either side. So um, a tough loss for them. But it happens in the NFL. It's almost a coin flip for the most part anyway. So not too discouraged by it. You have anything on that one?
No, I just remember it was a nasty day. Just kind of, I don't know. Both offenses really struggled to move other than that one big play like you were talking about from ETN. So not too shocked. I mean, the Jags are 6-2, really improved over the last couple of years. You can see those draft picks starting to pay off, and I mean, really solid team. So nothing to be too upset about. Like you said, NFL, everybody's going to lose 4 or 5.
Yeah. All right, next one was Chiefs and Broncos. Chiefs dropped the one to the Broncos. It's their first loss since Peyton Manning was there playing for the Broncos. So, I think Patrick Mahomes was 16-0 against the Broncos in his career. So, I mean that's a wild statistics from any standpoint. One that kind of always stands out to me, especially since I'm a Steelers fan. 24-3-1 against the Browns all time, and at one point he had more wins in Cleveland than any quarterback that played there for several years. So that's kind of looking how it'll be for Mahomes with the Broncos if history continues to repeat itself. But a really surprising loss for them. But like you said, it's the NFL. Really anything can happen any given Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, it was kind of time. It's hard to keep streaks like that going in the NFL. So the Broncos were kind of due. The Chiefs had been playing well, hadn't lost since that opening game against the Lions. So it's kind of their time. Everything lined up right, and the Broncos played well. Chiefs turned the ball over a couple times, didn't move it well. The Broncos D line really caused them some problems. So just like we said, the NFL. I mean, even the best team's going to lose 3 or 4 times. So
Yeah.
nothing shocking here. Chiefs got right back on track this past week.
All right, then the last one from week 8 was the Bengals over the 49ers. Kind of surprising, and I think a lot of people said it too, but it almost seems like the 49ers don't really know what to do on offense with Deebo Samuel. Even though he wasn't really heavily involved in their offense the first few weeks, but he's a very versatile component to their game. And they've dropped 3 in a row now. They lost to the Browns, the Vikings, and the Bengals, which I definitely would have seen them winning at least 2 of those. Dropping maybe one either to the Browns or the Bengals, but they got to find a way to get back on track. But they've got a tough matchup this week with the Jaguars. So, but again, Joe Burrow's starting to look more healthy, and they're kind of starting to look like them old selves. So, good for them. But tough. Both those teams have 3 losses. Yeah. All right, week 9, Thursday night matchup with Steelers and Titans. Steelers found a way to win. Kind of a gritty win. Nothing really too impressive about the game, other than they kind of got the run game going a little bit better. Najee and Jalen Warren combined for about 150 yards, so that was good to see. Obviously you want more than that in any level of football, but the important thing is getting the win at the end. Uh, I would have been real upset if we lost to Will Levis, and uh, you know, I don't think he's that good anyway, but he's actually playing kind of decent for them. Yeah, that was Deontay Johnson's first touchdown catch, and I think it was like 600 something days, so like almost 200, almost 2 years since he had a touchdown. He didn't have any last year, so good to see him finally get back in the end zone, and hopefully we can continue that. I mean, I'd like to see more touchdowns than drops at the end of the year, so we'll see how that goes. Next one, Chiefs. Yeah, he has 100%. I agree. All right, next one, Chiefs and Dolphins. I think people kind of saw this one being more of a shootout, kind of high scoring, but this one was in Germany, so that throws everything off. I think those international games are always kind of funky and um, can be wacky and have weird outcomes. But the Chiefs were up 21 nothing at halftime, so the final score was 21-14. So it's kind of weird to think about the Chiefs being shut out in an entire half and the Dolphins being shut out in an entire half with how their offenses have played. But um, close game, but Chiefs came out on top. I think they needed the win a little bit more after that loss to the Broncos, but um, the AFC East is getting real tight with the Dolphins and the Bills and the Jets, and not really the Patriots, but just overall a tough division, and they needed that win also. I think the Chiefs could have managed losing a little bit more, but Chiefs found a way to win. Yeah, Kelsey with 2 catches. Yeah, yeah, hopefully so. All right, next one was Ravens and Seahawks. We're in our Survivor League together. I know we talked about taking the Ravens, but I kind of thought that the Seahawks were going to win straight up, and the Ravens just beat them like a drum. To be honest with you, I mean, it was never really close. They just kind of did what they wanted on offense, and Seattle couldn't answer at any point in time. So it was a good win for the Ravens. They're getting their feet back under them. They're at top of the division right now, but they haven't had their bye week yet either. The Steelers do have the head to head over them, so hopefully they get that bye week soon. Steelers can tally up some more wins and move back in first. But a good win for them overall. Yeah, that was my Survivor. Yeah. Yeah, I think Minshew was actually playing quarterback that game when the Colts beat him. It wasn't even Richardson, which I mean, Minshew's probably one of the better backups in the league. You know, not what you'd expect. All right, next one was the Vikings at the Falcons. I wrote this down in the notes as Dobbs to the rescue. Dobbs has played really good all year for Arizona. They just don't really have a good team necessarily. They're kind of banged up. James Conner's been out for several weeks. Now he's kind of thrown into a situation with Kirk Cousins being out for the year. I think he got there on Tuesday and then played on Sunday. He didn't start, but the starter got hurt real early. I can't remember if it was the first series or not, but it was definitely in the first quarter. He came in not knowing the playbook, not knowing, the play calls, not even knowing the guys on his team name, and it was kind of rocky at the beginning. Had a couple turnovers, but found a way to win. Game-winning drive. Put up good numbers still. But it's a good situation for him. He's finally getting a shot to be a starter this year, a solid starter at that. But he's got a lot of talent on offense. They have a really good defense. He's getting Justin Jefferson back this week. So I mean, they kind of started out rough, even with Cousins at the beginning of the year. But they're sitting 5-4. They're not out of the playoffs yet. And I think if Dobbs continues to play like he has all year so far, I think he can put him in the playoffs. I think he's got a really good chance with the roster he has beside him. Yeah, there you go. You got the jersey ordered yet? Yeah, yeah. I definitely didn't see them trading him, but uh, the Vikings were in need, and it almost seems like the Cardinals are tanking at this point. They haven't tried to improve at all. So, but yeah, we'll see how that goes.